What's up, everybody? Merry Christmas. Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down this 2-game Christmas slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. If you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position, but with there only being 2 games, we have 4 quarterbacks to pick from. I mean, there's really not too much to talk about here. Obviously, Lamar Jackson will be the chalk of the slate. Now, he is the most expensive by $1,500. He's almost $3,000 more than the cheapest option available, so it's not like he's free and it's easy to plug in. Now, overall, if you want to fit him in, there's definitely not many constrictions to do that, but he is the highest priced guy by a decent margin, but deservedly so. You can make a case for him being the NFL MVP this year. His numbers in a lot of aspects have been better than Josh Allen. He's been playing extremely well this season. It's a nice matchup here versus the Houston Texans on the road, 25.5 implied team total, no weather to worry about, and he offers you that passing upside, the rushing upside. The Texans have been bottom half of the league in terms of fantasy points allowed per game at the quarterback position, so no reason not to like Lamar here. And then I would say everybody else is probably your tournament options. Patrick Mahomes would be my QB2 personally. Then honestly, I think you can make a case for Russell Wilson over CJ Stroud with him losing Tank Dell. There's not too many options to get the ball to. Obviously, you have Nico Collins, but Russell Wilson is getting George Pickens back, which is a nice bump. And at that price point, you can fit in multiple studs on the slate. Whether you want to get Nico Collins in, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, definitely frees up some salary. And if we're looking at the stack sheet here, and if you guys ever do want access to anything I show you on the sheet, there's a lot more available in the link down below in the description or the pinned comments throughout the entire slate. Projections for both sides, optimize our ownership projections, cheat sheet, or cash games and tournaments, and basically everything on there. So if you check it out, you know where to find it. But we have the sorted by salary here. And again, there's only 4 teams, so there's really just not much to look at or talk about on this slate. But the Baltimore Ravens are the most expensive, which makes sense. You have the most expensive quarterback, you have the most expensive running back. Wide receivers, it's not as bad as some other teams, but even then, Zay Flowers is right around $6,400. Nico Collins is $8,300, and it's a big drop off after that. So if you are prioritizing Nico Collins on this slate, pretty much all the other wide receivers are much cheaper. But the Ravens are coming in with the highest overall team stack, which again makes sense. They have 2 viable tight ends. Derrick Henry, I mean, yeah, I think everybody understands why the Ravens will probably be the highest predicted teams. In both places, they have the highest implied team total in this game. It does feature a 2-point higher over-under compared to the Chiefs and Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, they are the most expensive, so it can be a little bit tougher to get to them. I really don't mind these like KC Pittsburgh stacks, though. It's definitely cheaper, and Patrick Mahomes, his options are not that expensive. Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown emerged into the scene. I wasn't sure how much he was going to play in that game, but he had a very nice role. So I think we can probably trust him in this one. And they do have the highest overall like passing stack projections for me. Now, it's not like it's by a ton, but it is leading every team here at 79.3 for quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end. And even quarterback and wide receiver leads the way just over Houston and Baltimore. So I think those KC stacks definitely look really good in tournaments. Or on the flip side, playing Russell Wilson stacks with, say, George Pickens or Freiermuth, and then you can run it back with one of the Chiefs options. I don't think that would be difficult. Now, Houston, it's basically a big 3 here at this point with no Tank Dell. They've just been decimated at the wide receiver position because they've also lost Stephon Diggs. So he once had the big 3, and now it's just the big 1 with Nico Collins. He'll obviously be a high priority on this slate because Baltimore has given up passage yards wise, and I'm assuming the Texans are going to be trailing in this one. They're at home in the Dome, so we should get a hefty dose of Nico. It's just a matter of if he can get to the end zone or not, which I'm hoping he can. Then Joe Mixon and CJ Stroud. Dalton Schultz will definitely get a bump. We saw him get some nice usage last week, so that'll probably continue in this one with no Tank Dell because the other options at wide receiver are not pretty. You have John Mechie, Robert Woods, Xavier Hutchinson. Like, there's just not much to work with or dump off to Joe Mixon. All right, let's go over to the build here. And as I always say, guys, I'm not building you guys a lineup. You got to apply your own favorite plays, but you can use a similar process or strategy for your single entry 3-max type contest. So we can kind of break the rules a little bit that we normally do on a main slate because it's a 2-game slate. And obviously, it's kind of hard to do the normal things you would on a main slate where we have 10, 12 teams, whatever it may be. So like triple stacking, quadruple stacking, sometimes that can happen on a slate like that. Like if you get the team that scores 40 points, if that happens, you're probably going to want a lot of players. I'm not sure that'll happen on this slate. I'd say the most likely one to do that would be Baltimore. But for this specific lineup, let's go with the Chiefs in Pittsburgh game. We're going to roll with Patrick Mahomes and move on to running back. And I just have every single one listed on here, at least like the projected top 2 starters. And I do want to mention for Baltimore, Justice Hill, I believe that's the only question mark on this one. He is very questionable for this game. Got a concussion, I believe, on the Saturday game. And Wednesday is a quick turnaround. We've seen this year concussions. It takes guys sometimes multiple weeks to come back. So if he's out, I believe Ali and Mitchell would be the options to fill in, but it would really just be the Derrick Henry show in that regard. And Derrick Henry would be the top spend up on this slate. I mean, they should just feed him the rock here. They are favorites, 5.5 point spread, and absolutely decimated the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe he had almost 200 yards in that game. Now, the Texans have been pretty good versus the run this year, but I mean, it's the Ravens. I don't really care. 6 yards per clip near this season, averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. You should get the ball 20 plus times. I mean, yeah, Derrick Henry, if you had the money for him. And if you don't have Lamar Jackson, the Ravens are going to score points. So I think it makes sense to play Derrick Henry, because if Lamar's not scoring points, which you're assuming, if you're not playing Lamar Jackson lineups, you got to throw in Derrick Henry, I think, because that's the only way to kind of combat that. Joe Mixon, the other running back on this slate, like these are the volume hogs. These are the guys you want to just jam in your lineups. 24 opportunities per game for Joe Mixon, 13% target share. They're probably going to be trailing, but I don't think this game's going to be a blowout by any means. Now, the Ravens are pretty good versus the run as well. I mean, he's 7th fewest points per game, but he's just going to get the ball. They don't have a choice. Really give it to anybody else. Now, the Chiefs have a very split backfield at this point. I think a lot of people probably assumed Isaiah Pacheco would take over the backfield more than he has, but Kareem Hunt actually outsnapped him last week. You also saw Hunt get into the end zone, some goal line work, so it's going to be pretty split here, and if it's going to be split, I mean, you almost want to go with the cheaper back, but Pacheco's cheaper on FanDuel, and Kareem Hunt's cheaper on DraftKings. I mean, they project just about the same for me. I got them both projected for around 11 carries in this game. It's just a matter of who gets into the end zone, really, and honestly, if I told you which one I think was going to get a touchdown, I'd be lying, because I think it's just a roulette wheel. You kind of got to get lucky in that regard. And then we also have another split backfield with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren's actually been outsnapping Najee Harris the past 3 weeks. He's been in the 50 and 60% range. Najee Harris has been in the 40 and 30% range. Jaylen Warren's also a more capable pass catcher, so and the price is just about the same. I think Jaylen Warren has a little bit more of a floor. Now, Najee Harris will obviously get goal line work, but I do think it's very close, and projections would say the same. So it's a kind of a messy RB slate of Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon, and that's why they're more than likely going to be priorities for me on this one. Okay, back to the build here. I'm going to try to jam in Derrick Henry. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to. I mean, I think we'll be able to. We don't have Lamar Jackson, so we'll just have to figure it out. I would like to afford Nico Collins as well. That's the issue. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, so let's see what happens. I'm going to forego Joe Mixon in this specific build, but I did get one of the main priorities for me. And I think Jaylen Warren, we'll go with him over Najee. I mean, it's very close between him and Najee, but we'll just go with Jaylen for this one, because we're stacking the Chiefs. I mean, we can kind of assume they're winning this game, and those are playing from behind. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything, but could just lead to more checkdowns. Had 5 targets last week, trailing the Baltimore Ravens, so if we could get more of that, I would appreciate it. And once again, I just have the top 4 depth chart wide receivers, at least projected from each team here, so 4 times 4 of the 16 guys. Obviously, some of them are just basically useless, like Justin Watson down there and Nelson Aguilar. If you're playing 20 max, 150 max, you're filtering those guys in, but if you're playing single entries, you're probably not getting to them. Obviously, the ones everyone wants to get to are going to be the top 3 with Nico Collins, George Pickens, Zay Flowers. Nico Collins is the only one that you kind of have to really force into your lineup at $9,100 on FanDuel, $8,300 over on DraftKings, but with no Tank Dell, no Stephon Diggs. Ravens allowing the second most points per game to the wide receiver position. Obviously, people are going to want to get to Nico. He's going to project well. He projects very well for me. I have him right around 23, 24 points, which when we do our projections, we kind of factor in somewhat of a sliding scale towards a bonus, so it might be a little bit inflated compared to others, but I do incorporate that. But obviously, he looks great. 90 yards per game this season, 6 catches, 8.5 targets, 26% target share. He gets into the end zone quite often. I mean, Stroud's got to throw the ball somewhere. It's probably going to be Nico. Then George Pickens, he looks like he is set to return. So I think in this Chiefs stack that we're doing, obviously I would like to try to get a guy like Pickens or Freiermuth as a run back option. Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman's really came alive, though. Like, if you can't quite get to Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman for $2,000 cheaper, he's been quite involved, honestly. 4.5 targets per game compared to the 7.3 for Zay Flowers, 15% target share compared to 26%, but he hasn't found in the end zone quite often. He does have a nice ADOT as well for big play upside. Then we have the Chiefs mess of Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, and Hollywood Brown. Throwing Justin Watson down there. You also have Juju Smith-Schuster. Bit of a mess. But in recent weeks, it's kind of been Xavier Worthy taking over as the wide receiver 1 in this offense over DeAndre Hopkins, and the price on DraftKings and FanDuel does reflect that. And Hollywood Brown got 27% of the snaps last week. I believe DeAndre Hopkins was below 50%. Xavier Worthy was around 80% of the snaps. So I mean, Hollywood, if you played 30% snaps last week, we're going to assume that probably gets ramped up a little bit at $4,500. It's kind of just a mix and match situation, but did have 8 targets in that game, 5 catches. Like, yeah, he was very involved. I'm not sure we'll see 8 targets again, but anything close to that would be great at that price point. And everybody else on here, it's just tournament options, like stack with your quarterback. If you're playing C.D. Stroud, play Nico Collins, maybe throw in like a John Mechie to get different. Dalton Schultz when we talk about tight end. If I'm playing Russell Wilson, Pickens, Calvin Austin, Freiermuth, just try to make it fit. All right, to the build, we're going to have to prioritize getting a KC wide receiver because I'm going to play Travis Kelce just in this build here. So we'll see if we can fit Nico at the end. I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be able to. I am going to play George Pickens though, just to try to do that full game stack here. So we have our pick of the litter of Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, or Hollywood Brown. I mean, I'd like to get Xavier Worthy in here. That leaves us $4,400 left. We can play a cheaper defense. Problem is Travis Kelce he's not that expensive, $5,300. It's just weird seeing Travis Kelce at that price point. So I think we can make it work, but we'll have to revisit at the end. And speaking of tight ends here, we have our list. And Travis Kelce, since I have Patrick Mahomes, he's going to be the one I stick in. I know he's washed this year, but he still gets the targets. At the very least, we just kind of have to hope he gets to the end zone, but he has not been scoring touchdowns this year, like 0.1 per game this year. So it's just very, very down season. And unfortunately, the washiness, whatever you want to call it, has finally reached to Travis Kelce a bit. I'm sure they'll turn it on in the playoffs like always, but right now it's not great. Mark Andrews, he's kind of revitalized himself after a really slow start to the season. Him and Isaiah Likely, fine options whether you have Lamar Jackson or not. But if you do have Lamar Jackson, obviously I think Mark Andrews be a great stacking option. Dalton Schultz will get an upgrade this week with no Tank Dell. Just the target's got to go somewhere, and I don't really think Xavier Hutchinson, Robert Woods, those kind of guys are just going to get force-fed because they're not very good at football. Not saying Dalton Schultz is amazing, but he's a capable pass catcher. Freiermuth at that price point, I like it, but man, just really not involved last week, which is weird. And then other than that, I mean, these guys are just completely YOLOs. Okay, let's finish this lineup off here. Let's just throw in a defense. We have Derrick Henry. Let's just correlate with the Ravens defense. But honestly, whatever defense you want to play in the slate, I don't care. Everyone's team total is about the same. Nothing really stands out too much, although the Ravens do project the best of the bunch. I just don't think there's any way we can afford Nico Collins in this lineup. Because I just can't do it. Unless I play a backup tight end and then another min-price guy, but I just don't want to do that. So for this specific build, we just kind of have to hope that Nico Collins doesn't get the ceiling game. I guess we can throw another, well, we should fit in Travis Kelce for now because we need that double stack going. So Mahomes with Worthy and Kelce. $4,500 left. I know for sure we can do that. I don't normally go double flex tight end, but this would not be a bad time to do it because I trust Mark Andrews more than I trust a guy like Calvin Austin here or really just any of these guys. So, and then we can get a piece of that Ravens pass catching core just in case Lamar Jackson gets some points, we can soak it up there. And that leaves us with $4,800 left for the last spot. And you can like Rashad Bateman, Hollywood Brown. Like I think that's a fine looking lineup for a 2-gamer. So we have Patrick Mahomes, double stack with Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. If you wanted a triple stack, you could with Hollywood Brown. We have Derrick Henry, Jalen Warren at running backs, and George Pickens, part of the game stack there. Mark Andrews in the flex. Ravens defense. Obviously, you can apply this to your own favorite plays, and it's hard to get too crazy different on a 2-game slate, but overall, I don't think it's a bad looking lineup. We also don't have Nico Collins, so that should keep it different enough, at least on this one. And as always, let's run the optimizer here to see which players are popping, which 2-gamer guys. That's not going to be anything too crazy here. Let's throw in some settings. We'll throw in 10% randomness, like we always do just for this example. I'm not going to put the tight end ineligible at flex. I think it's totally fine. I select this. If you wanted to make sure you don't get like 5 players from the same team, I forget what the exact rule is, you can do that. But I am just going to do some quick stack settings. Do the stack quarterback, wide receiver, tight end from the same team. If you wanted to force from the opposing team, you can. And since it's such a small slate, let's just do it for this example here. So we'll get a full-on game stack here. Team. Run a quick 20 max here, and I'll see you guys in a second. All right, and we are back here. So let's look at some of the builds and what the player usage here. So Ravens defense getting jammed in. Najee Harris, a lot of Najee Harris. Travis Kelce, Derrick Henry, Xavier Worthy. I mean, can't act like I'm surprised by anybody because there's only such a limited player pool to work with. But let's look at this first Patrick Mahomes lineup here. So we have Pat Mahomes with Najee and Derrick Henry, but we also have DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy, and Travis Kelce. So we have a triple stack going, and it's ran back with George Pickens, Najee Harris, and Pat Freiermuth. So that's a full-on game stack pretty much from that game, which seems crazy, but it could definitely work out. We have Lamar Jackson down here, which we have paired with Rashad Bateman. And it looks like it's just Rashad Bateman. But with Lamar Jackson being a rushing quarterback, it doesn't exactly have to have 2 pass catchers paired with him. Down here, though, I don't know if my head might be blocking it, but we have Lamar Jackson paired with Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, ran back with the Nico Collins and Joe Mixon. And I saw a Cade Stover lineup pop in. But I've seen crazier things happen before. So highest usage team, Baltimore Ravens, KC, Pittsburgh, and Houston, which honestly seems fair to me because the 2 Houston guys are kind of expensive and their team total is lacking a little bit. The Steelers have a similar team total, but they're a lot cheaper, which makes them easier to fit in. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, or even if you didn't, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Make sure you have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I'll see you on Saturday for the main slate breakdown.